Hello, and welcome to 3 Inning Fan, the podcast with me, Kelley Franco. Thank you so much for joining me. We have about 11 games left in the regular season. Can you believe that? In the National League, there are 4 teams for 3 wildcard spots. It's a game of musical chairs, and one team will be left standing. Will the Mets get a seat at the dance? Or will they get a tea time in October? And how about that NL West? It's unsettled and the intrigue is building. Can the Padres stage a coup? In the American League, the Yankees are trying to hold on to the AL East division, and the Orioles are nipping at their heels, although there's been a little more space between those two teams in the past few days. And the AL wildcard is getting toasty as the Tigers and the Mariners refuse to die. We'll talk about it all today. I'm going to Citi Field tonight to watch the Mets play the Nationals at the invitation of my Twitter friend, Lita Smith Mines. Lita, I can't wait to meet you. But I promised my faithful listener, ETA Mommy, or do I pronounce that Edamame, that I would start with the Yankees today. So let's do that. The Yankees are looking amazing. They beat up on the Mariners last night, who are fighting for their playoff lives. Then they play the A's. What a time for a West Coast trip. Oh, goodness. But then they'll be home for the last 2 series of the season. A huge one against the Orioles, unless they can really put some more distance between them and the Orioles before next week. And then they finish against the Pirates. Now, the Yankees took 3 out of 4 from the Red Sox last weekend. Sounds great, right? No, the drama. You've all heard it by now, so I'll be quick here. In Saturday's game, Cole hit Raffy Devers in his first at-bat, and then in his second at-bat, Cole intentionally walked him, which was a bad move. It was apparently Cole's idea. Wells had nothing to do with it, and there may have been a conversation between Cole and Boone about being more aggressive with intentional walks, but pretty much everyone in the Western Hemisphere and the Eastern Hemisphere, and even those guys that are stuck on the space station, everybody denied having anything to do with this, except for Cole. So, is it a bad decision? Yes. Did Cole look weak? Yes. Scared? Totally. Did he fall apart and the Yankees lost the game? Yes. But you know what? He took the blame. He spoke to the press. He didn't hide. He admitted it was a bad decision. You got to try new things, okay? Sometimes I make a recipe and it stinks. What are you going to do? You can't do the same things over and over again. I don't think we're going to see Cole try to intentionally walk Devers again. Hopefully it won't be a factor this season, because I think the Red Sox are very close to not making it into the postseason unless they stage some kind of huge rally. They're 5 games out of the 3rd wildcard spot at this point. So I don't think it's going to be an issue again this year, but I honestly can't picture Cole doing it again until the end of time. And then Red Sox pitcher Brian Bayo intentionally threw at Aaron Judge as retaliation. Manager Alex Cora basically admitted this in the post-game conference. Judge handled it like the old school guy that he is. He acknowledged it's how the game is played, but it was still surprising to hear Cora get so close to just admitting it right out. And you know what? I'm glad Judge wasn't hurt. Overall, I think the whole situation was overblown, and I am ready to move on and stick a fork in it. And hey, the Yankees did take 3 out of 4 from the Red Sox, including an outrageous game on Friday when Aaron Judge snapped his 16-game home run-less streak with a dramatic grand slam to put the Yankees ahead and ultimately win the game. That was quite a moment. I think I scared the dog. Okay, let's talk a little bit about the Yankees closing situation, because at last check, Aaron Boone said he was going to be creative, which would be awesome if you were hiring him to make like a quilt, a bespoke quilt for your house, maybe out in the woods. But no, that's not what you want to hear if he's actually talking about your bullpen on the brink of starting the playoffs. You'll recall that Clay Holmes was blowing roughly 9 million saves, and that situation created the Yankees' desire to maybe change up the closer setup. But now some names are emerging to be favorites. Luke Weaver has put his name in the kitty. He had a 2-inning save on Friday night against the Red Sox. That was after Judge's grand slam. And the prior Friday, he had his first career save against the Cubs. That was September 6th. Are we on to something? There are still other options like Tommy Kahnle, especially against lefties. Now, both Weaver and Kahnle are righties, but righties and lefties have about equal success against Weaver. But against Kahnle, on the other hand, lefties are hitting 156 against him. So if you have a late inning with a couple of lefties coming up, Boone should still be leaning on Tommy Kahnle to face them. On the other hand, Weaver has been a starting pitcher in the past, and if you need a reliever to go more than 1 inning, he's your guy. In a way, you almost hate to see him wasted on just 1 inning because he has that capability. So maybe not having a regular closer in the traditional closer setup, but instead responding to the circumstances presented is the best idea. And how about Holmes? Well, he's still good, but he's a contact pitcher, so I don't really want to see him late in the game, especially if it's a close game. We haven't seen him in the 9th since he gave up that game-ending grand slam against Texas on September 3rd, and I'm okay with that. Who else in the bullpen might we see this postseason? Well, I think the Yankees' starting rotation is going to be Cole, Rodon, Heel, and if they need a fourth, which would most likely happen if they get to the League Championship Series, then Schmidt. So I think starters Stroman and Cortez are going to the pen. We saw Stroman come out of the pen last night against the Mariners to earn a 3-inning save, and we've seen Cortez come out of the pen already. The Yankees currently have the best record in the AL by a hair over the Guardians. If the Yankees, are the number 1 seed in the AL, they will have home field advantage throughout the playoffs for as far as they make it, although not necessarily in the World Series if they make it there. But query, do we care? The Yankees have played better on the road this year than they have at home. Not by a ton, but they have 4 more road game wins than at home. But as I mentioned a few weeks ago, who does care? Aaron Boone. Aaron Boone is on the hot seat. The Yankees haven't won a World Series or been to one since 2009. Now, that's not all Aaron Boone's fault. He didn't get there till 2018. That's when he started managing. But his contract goes to the end of this year with a club option for 2025. How far do you think Aaron Boone has to go in the postseason to make the club pick up that option? I think he has to win the pennant. But if he falls short of that, I think he would like to say that he managed his team to the best record in the AL. But overall, the Yankees are in a good spot right now. They're 4 games up on the Orioles. The Mets. The Mets are tied with the D-backs for the 2nd wild card spot. Who needs this 3rd wild card spot? And then they own the tiebreaker against the D-backs. The Mets are getting hot at exactly the right time. Francisco Lindor, let's cover this. He jammed up his back in Friday night's game against the Phillies, but apparently he had been playing with a sore back for a couple of weeks. He rested Saturday, then on Sunday he was in the lineup, but he took himself out of the game after just 1 inning. And up until the weekend, Lindor had played in every game this season. So when the word was that he took himself out of Sunday's game, it was concerning because we know he's really tough. So he had an MRI that didn't show any structural damage, so that's good news. But Lindor needs to get back out on the field. And on Monday, they were saying 2 to 5 days, so hopefully they can stick to that and he'll get back right after that game span. It's got to be killing him physically and mentally not to be out on that field because he knows how much that team needs him. Lindor is the MVP of this lineup and maybe the MVP of something else, but anyhow, there's no replacing him. But someone better get hot. Is it Pete Alonso? Pete has been struggling. We've talked about it almost every week here. And I was thinking that he could really enhance his off-season value if he could break out in these last 2 weeks. And lo and behold, did he listen to this podcast? Hey, Pete, because last night he had a 3-run homer and he also had a bloop that scored 2 RBIs. Has his moment finally arrived? We've been waiting all season for it. Vientos, J.D. Martinez, and Alvarez also need to step up and carry this team better from the plate. And the final word on Francisco, the longer he's out, the more his case for NL MVP will suffer. Mets pitching update, Kodai Senga. He will be eligible to return from the IL on September 25th. That's right in the heart of the series against the Braves. Could we see him in it? Maybe. But if we did, it's doubtful that we would see him for many innings. He will have to be stretched out slowly. But maybe we'll see him as an opener for a couple of innings. It would be a mental boost for the team if he could pitch well, and it would hold promise that he might be available for a wild card series, even just for a few innings and beyond. Would the Mets use him out of the bullpen? I don't think so. I think the Mets will want to keep him in as much of his starter routine as they can. The rest of the rotation looks good. Minaya, to me, is the ace right now. Peterson had a good rebound outing on Sunday, even though they wound up losing that game on a walk-off against the Phillies. Peterson had a prior bad outing, so it was good to see him kind of get on a good streak again. Sevy's strong, and he always seems like he contributes so much energy to that clubhouse. Let's talk about the Mets' remaining series. The Mets are on the brink of the playoffs, and they need to find a way to keep winning. They have another series against the Phillies this weekend. That's a 4-game series. And then a giant showdown against the Braves for the penultimate series of the year. Now, for the Phillies series, the Phillies are going to be playing that series hard. Yes, the division is basically wrapped up. However, the Phillies are going to want to be that number 1 seed in the NL to clinch home field advantage for the entire postseason and the World Series. Why? Because their home record is 52-26, and their road record is 39-34. The Phillies have only lost 26 games at home this season. And that second to last series of the season against the Braves next week, can you imagine? The Braves and the Mets duking it out for a wild card slot at Truist Park, and Luis Angel Acuna playing against his brother Ronald Acuna for those games? Shut the door. Are you still listening? Are you better off than you were 15 minutes ago? Well, I think that's a fine reason to subscribe on YouTube to this podcast or follow on Apple or Spotify. Just a reminder that my company is 3 Inning Fan LLC, and you are listening to me, Kelley Franco. I am on the socials at 3 Inning Fan, and if you like what you hear, I hope you follow along. All right, we've already gone a bit outside the New York baseball bubble, but let's go a little further afield so you know what's going on in all of MLB. Let's hop into the AL wildcard race because you never know when you will be subpoenaed to testify about this. And as your attorney, I need to make sure you're prepared. The division leaders in the AL are the Yankees, Guardians, and the Astros. And I would bet the Guardians and Astros hang on, and I think the Yankees do too, especially after lengthening their lead to 8 games over the Orioles. But we really just have to wait and see. And those Orioles, what is going on with them? They need a spark to get back to their young, fun selves. But anyway, so between the Yankees and the Orioles, they both get in. One with a division title and the other with a wild card, the first wild card. But then we have a bit of a stew, or even a fricassee, if you've been listening to too many of my food segments. So the stew is for the second and third wild cards. The Royals, the Twins, the Tigers, and yes, the Mariners even still are all in the mix for that third wild card. And the second one, really. So that's right. The Mariners are still breathing. They had a 10-game lead in June. Can you believe that? That seems like a million years ago. Then the Astros got hot and the Mariners got not hot. Now the Mariners have clawed back and they're 3 games out of the wild card. They hurt their chances with that loss to the Yankees last night. So their chances are now more remote because at this point, every game matters. But could you imagine that Mariners pitching in a short series? George Kirby, Brian Wu, Bryce Miller, Logan Gilbert. If it were to come to pass, it would really be something to see. The Tigers have changed this race by getting red hot, and the Twins have slipped, and that has just let the Tigers get all tigery. The Tigers are in the midst of a 3-game series right now against the Royals, and they have won the first 2 games. So the Tigers are only 1.5 games behind the Twins for that third wild card spot. And the Tigers get to play their last 3 games of the season against the White Sox. Okay, that was kind of mean. I'm sure the White Sox will be trying to play spoiler or at least avoid the moniker of worst team ever. So this AL wild card race is changing by the minute, and there's just no way to predict how it's going to shake out. Let's hop over to the Padres because something very interesting is happening in the NL West. There's been a great deal of assumption. You know what happens when you assume. There's been assumption that the Dodgers will take the NL West title, and they probably will. But the Padres are giving them a run for their money. The Padres are 3.5 games behind the Dodgers with 10 left to play. And the Padres own the tiebreaker against the Dodgers so far this year. And remember how I was mean and I said the Tigers got to play the White Sox in these last 2 weeks? Well, I'll be mean again. The Padres do too. They have a 3-game series against the Southsiders this weekend. And speaking of the Padres, Luis Arraez, old school hitter extraordinaire in the vein of Tony Gwynn. Well, he finally struck out. He hadn't struck out since the Mesozoic era. He had this long streak, but then he finally struck out on Monday, and he ended his strikeout-less streak at 141 plate appearances. It was the longest streak in 20 years. Juan Pierre had the longest streak this century, which was 147 plate appearances in 2004. And yes, when I researched this, I had to remind myself that this century is barely 24 years old. Not to take anything away from Arraez or Juan Pierre, but a century isn't what it used to be if you remember the 1990s. Or the 1900s, I should say, because in 1990, if you said somebody hadn't done something for a century, they hadn't done it for 90 years. Now it's just they haven't done it for 24 years. Arraez slaps the ball all over the field. He celebrates the single. He puts the ball in play. He makes things happen. In our slugging-obsessed baseball society, I love that he is consistently at the bottom of every metric that glorifies bat speed, power, and walks. Instead, he puts the ball in play and has a freakishly low strikeout rate. I like a dramatic home run as much as the next guy, but not everybody can be hitting dramatic home runs. And the bread and butter of successful teams are not the superstars. They are the guys in between the superstars. Arraez puts the ball in play, and he is better than most. He currently leads the NL with a .320 batting average, and he also leads in hits with 194. By the way, the AL leader in these categories and also the MLB leader is the amazing Bobby Witt Jr. of the Royals. But if Arise wins the batting title for the NL, it will be his third straight batting title, and he would be the first player to do this in the modern era with 3 different teams, last year with the Marlins and the year prior with the Twins. And why do teams keep trading a batting champ? Because there is absolutely no good reason in the whole wide world. Dodgers. The Mets could easily be facing the Dodgers in the division series if the cards fall a certain way. So we need to update you on the Dodgers starting rotation. We talked last week about their pitching woes and how they finally had Yamamoto and were hoping Glasnow would be back too. Yamamoto has returned and he's had 2 respectable 4-inning outings. So that was a huge plus for the Dodgers. They're starting him off slowly and they'll probably start to stretch him out in his next outing. Some Mets fans quietly root against Yamamoto because he was a little bit of an off-season tease. Are you one of them? But Tyler Glasnow, who's been out since August 11th with elbow tendonitis, suffered a setback while warming up in a simulated game. He was diagnosed with a sprained elbow and seems to be shut down for the year. He joins these starting pitchers who are out for the rest of the season: Dustin May, Emmett Sheehan, and River Ryan, not to mention Kershaw, Gavin Stone, and Tony Gonsolin being on the IL. So it seems the Dodgers starting rotation is in shambles. What's going right for them? Here's a name to know: reliever Michael Kopech. He got the win over the Braves on Sunday night after the Braves took the first 2 games of that series. On Sunday, he had a powerful outing when he pitched the bottom of the 8th and kept the game tied, allowing the Dodgers to pull out a 9th-inning win. The Dodgers got Kopech from the White Sox at the trade deadline. This season for the White Sox, Kopech had a 4.74 ERA in 43 relief appearances. Bad. But since the trade to the Dodgers, that wasn't bad, but it was not great. But since the trade to the Dodgers, he's been almost unhittable with a .53 ERA. How did he do it? His signature fastball, which can hit over 100 miles per hour, he's pitching less of it, he says. Listen to this. It's a great pitch, but hitters were waiting on it and then hitting it. He says that by using more secondary pitches, he is pitching rather than throwing. And the result has been that his fastball, when he does throw it, is more dominant. Imagine that. That was sarcastic if you don't know me well enough. So I love that, and I wish we'd see more of it because I love pitching and not just throwing. Postscript on the Dodgers pitching. Listen to this. Manager Dave Roberts was asked if it were possible that Ohtani could pitch in the postseason. He said, quote, anything is possible, unquote. And the chances were slim, but not zero. Can you picture this? Ohtani throws rehab starts in secrecy. And then, Game 7, bottom of the 9th, and Shohei comes out of the pen. Now that would be some postseason drama. Let's get to our closer. What's good to eat while watching the ball game? We do try to eat seasonally here at 3-Inning Fan LLC, and right now you are hopefully still harvesting or buying from your local market gorgeous cherry tomatoes. If you've never tried to grow them, please make a note for next June to do it. They're fun to grow because they're so prolific and you just keep pulling little tomatoes off them for what seems like months. And they could also easily grow in a patio planter if that's all you have room for. You might need to stake them up and tie them up because they get all wavy and wiggly. The Sun Gold variety, which are yellow, should be one of the varieties you buy because they are just bursting with flavor. I was looking for great recipes to make with my cherry tomatoes, and I came across one from Melissa Clark of the New York Times, and it was called Skillet Chicken Thighs with Schmaltzy Tomatoes. So she basically had me at schmaltz. Do you know what schmaltz is? It's a delicious word, whether you are Jewish or not. It basically means fat. So schmaltzy potatoes, schmaltzy tomatoes, or anything schmaltzy in this entire world is delicious. So I made these chicken thighs with schmaltzy tomatoes, and they were so tender and flavorful, and it was so easy. You just brown your chicken thighs. I love the chicken thigh. You brown the chicken thigh in a cast iron skillet to get a nice golden crust on the skin, and then you finish roasting them in the oven. When they're hot, put them and all their schmaltzy fat juice over your cut up cherry tomatoes with some red onion in there and maybe some basil too, and you have a meal fit for a baseball queen. All right. We are off to the races. With less than 2 weeks to go in the regular season, it is more important than ever to listen to 3 Inning Fan, the podcast. I hope to see you next week.